Welcome to this webinar where we're going to talk about the Naviate Line Style Library. My name is Caroline. I'm here in the Symmetry Gothenburg, and I'm going to show you today. I also have my colleague Thomas along with me, and he will answer any questions that you have in the questions pane. Line Style Library is the goal for the day. And as you'll see my Civil 3D, so I'm just going to go right in and explain how the function works. What we do with Line Style Library is it's a method of easily selecting the correct layer when creating linear objects, as it says in the description of this webinar. And that is the base of it. It is a way of, at the same time as you create your linear objects, we're talking polylines, 3D polys, you can also select what layer they should end up on. For our Swedish participants, be aware that this is actually something that is intending to replace the tool palette Naviate Landscape 2D. This is a tool palette we can use to do this, to actually create the lines and have them on specific layers. But the downside of this tool palette is that you can't determine it on your own. You have to it's pre-prepared here. So this is a method to replace this tool palette and also to make it more adaptable for you so that you can create your own lists in this case and determine what layers you should use. But just so you know, if you're using that one, it is a part of the Naviate Landscape. So you can find the command on Naviate Landscape tab up here, and then you have Line Style Library. Just a note, because I had some issues this morning, I'm actually running on a beta version. This is not exactly the released version. The reason for this is I want to show you something that is coming, that is actually looking very good, that I just got from the development side, and I really want to show you how it looks. So that is why I have, so there are some issues that we're still sort of working out when it comes to hatches, but hopefully I managed to avoid them all. But just so you're aware, if something happens, I have my reason for it. But easiest way, start the command, Line Style Library. You come into this dialog. It's actually a modular window, which means that you can keep it open while you do other stuff. So I'm going to see if I can have this open all the way through and show you how it looks. I have a little bit of background here just to have something to sort of work from. So I'm going to do some lines regarding this layout that I'm doing. So inside the dialog, you select your line style file. So I have my line style example, which is our international example that comes with every installation of Civil 3D. For the Swedish landscapers, we also have one called Landskapslinjer, and that is meant to replace the toolpad that we have. For our Finnish audience, we have a file called Maisema that is also intended for the landscape use. So depending on the installation, you might have a couple different here, specifically for the Swedish and Finnish ones. But everyone has the line style example, so that is why I'm going to use this one. It is a bit added to today, just so I have a few more line styles to use here. But you'll recognize how it looks. So when I want to use this, I have my line sets, my line styles, or my line properties, depending on how you want to use this, in the window up here. And then at the bottom, I have different commands for creating different objects. So the idea here is that you select the line that you're looking for. In this case, I want to do a property line. You have it pre-selected over or preset over here. So you see how it will create it, what line, what layer, and what style and stuff like that. And then you start your command down at the bottom. So in this case, I want to do a 2D polyline. It's doing a little bit in the background here that you can see down on the command line. So if I now do a property line, and then I'm going to start, and let's just hope that, yes, now it looks better. So not sure what happened there. So again, you select your object, and I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to ask Thomas to mute himself again because he's fidgeting in the background. So once you create your command, it's actually returning to the dialog. So you can create multiple lines from it. But you can see here that the information that we had in the right-hand side is what is used to create the polyline. So we can see here in our properties. So it's using all these different settings to create this. So all the way down to closed is actual information that we use for lines, for line objects. And depending on the line that you're using here, you can see different informations. The file line style example is actually intended to sort of show you the options that you have here. Usually this will probably be a lot of by layer. And I'll come back to what that means when we do this, but I just want to show you the command first. So until closed, and closed is an important thing to remember, because closed, if I have that as a 0, it means that the line won't be automatically closed. But I can set this to 1. So if I take a look at the grass instead, now the grass line in this example is meant to be a closed line. It should always be a closed line. And if you have that, then you can set close to 1 here. And what that means is that if I start the command now and draw my line, I'm going to do it in the area here. So I'm going to do a grass area here in the middle. This is the normal polyline command, so you can do arcs and stuff if you want to as well. But if I now just hit enter to finish this, then the command will actually close it for me. So that is what closed 1 means. It means that it's going to be closed no matter what I want or how I end the command. The benefit of this is, of course, when we talk about hatches, because that's another part of the Line Style library, is you can automatically create hatches, and you can also create hatches on your own. And hatches is notoriously fickle in AutoCAD. You have to sort of be aware of what you're doing. So to have lines be closed means it's much, much easier to create the hatches. So it is a good thing, but it's good to remember what we're doing here. So everything in this list, from hatch pattern down to annotated, is information that we use when we create hatches. So it's the same sort of selection up here that we can do to create hatches. Now these two commands down here is to create hatches. So now that I have my object selected, I can do hatch selected objects, and it's creating my hatch. And of course, it's giving me the exception again, but it's actually creating my hatch. It's creating the hatch on the layer that it's supposed to be, and it's using the information that I had in the dialog. So if I open it again, not the plant data, it's the wrong command. So let's just close that one and go to Line Style Library, which is what I'm talking about right now. We can see the information here about my hatches that I'm doing. So I can create the hatch as well. I can also do it automatically. So I don't need to create them as I did right now, where I create the line first and then the hatch. I can use the command up here called auto add hatch. So if I activate my auto add hatch, I do the grass, I select my polyline, I draw the area. I'm going to do an area over here, but I'm going to have grass as well. So I'm just going to do sort of sketch it out a little bit. I'm not going to bother with close. I can close it, of course, on my own, and that's always a good idea to sort of keep that, use close when you talk about hatches. But in this case, if I just hit enter, the command will close it for me and also add the hatch directly. So auto add hatch means it's adding the hatch when the closed polyline is drawn. If you don't close the polyline, then that hatch can't be added. So that is the information that you have down here. We're going to come back to the last part, which is about property set. So we also can add property set, but I'm going to come back to that. Because one of the new things that's coming, and the reason why I really want to do this on a beta, even though it's a bit messing with me, is that we have the option down here in my beta to change the hatch angle, and this looks really nice. So if I now want to rotate my hatch, I have the option down here to change the hatch angle. And if I have it selected, I can just click on a point and I start rotating the hatch. So depending on what I want to do, I can very easily here select to change the hatch angle of my object. So that is something that is coming, and it's working really nice already. So it's all about testing. But as we see, it does something with my hatches that I haven't really been prepared for. So we need a little bit more testing on it. That's something that's coming. We have two different hatch commands down here, select objects or internal points. So it's the two hatch versions that we're used to. But we have a couple of different polyline functionalities here that I wanted to show you as well. 3D polyline, very normal, but we also have M polygon and B poly. And maybe not everyone is aware what these two are. So M polygon, if I just go back and just deselect this one, if I untick auto add hatch, because if you use an M polygon, you don't need to use the hatch because M polygon contains the hatch. So if I do a grass here again, not have auto add hatch, and do an M polygon, and then same thing again, just going to click out my area here. like that. Then I'm going to do C for close. And it's actually doing the hatches for it as well. So the M polygon contains both the line objects and the hatch pattern. And it's using from both these areas here. So that's the M polygon down here that we're doing. These are standard AutoCAD objects, so it's not something that we have magically discovered here in Symmetry, but it's actually AutoCAD object. The last one here is a B poly, and this will become an ordinary polyline, but it's a way of creating a B poly or creating a polyline from boundary objects. So if I have an area that I want to create a closed polyline for this area, then I can do a B poly. So I'm going to select my fence here. So I want to do a fence around this area. And I'm going to start my B poly command, click inside, and it's creating the fence around it. So it's going to be a closed polyline, and then it's using the object's information that I have here in my line style library that I'm using. Be aware though, if you use this on objects, if you feel like, well, yeah, I want this square as well to be a B poly, but what's going to happen here, it's actually finding a little corner there from another line. So it's analyzing the line work that it finds in your file and creating the B poly from it. So sometimes you might sort of lines that you just ignore, B poly finds them. So be aware that this will happen. This is perfectly normal for the command that it's doing. But it's a normal polyline, so you can edit it how you would like it to be once it's been created. Another thing that we can do, we don't only need to create objects. If I move over to this one, we also have the option down here to do apply properties. You'll recognize the icon down here. So if I already have lines in my file, I can also apply these properties to that line. So for instance, if I want to create a fence line for this one, but I don't really want to redo it, I can use the normal AutoCAD command called ncopy, nested copy, to copy objects from an xref. Click on my line, just click enter, and then I'm just going to do enter, enter, because I want it to be in the same place. Now I have a polyline inside my drawing that comes from the xref. But of course, it's not on the correct layer that I want to use. So now I use apply properties instead down here. And it's moving it over to the fence line and having the same information there. So those are the different functionalities that we have down here, how I want this to be used. If we come back to the layers that it's placing it on, right now I don't have these, or I don't need to have these layers in my drawing. It's actually creating the layers if it needs to. So I can just run this straight up, but if everything is done by layer, that means it's going to create new layers all the time. So a better way is to make sure you have these layers already created in a drawing or import them. And that's actually something that the command does. And you can do this in multiple ways. First, you have the option up here to do click on the DVT. And as the tooltip says, you can then select a DWT or a DWG to import. So just straight up import, get in the layers into your drawing. That is one option to do. What the command actually does automatically, which we can see down here, if I move over to my Swedish example, we can see down on the command line, it's actually doing something. It's importing the landskapslinje DWG from my support folder. So if I have a corresponding DWG or DWT or DWG, I will say, a drawing file that is called the same as this library file, then it will import automatically. If we take a look at the support folder where we have this information, so I'm going to open the support folder, help, and Naviate support files. This is all stored in the folder called Naviate Line Styles. Logic senses that it's the command. Inside here, you can see the CSV files. These are the CSV files that I can see in my list up here. So that is where that comes from. And here I can also see that I have landskapslinje and I have landskapslinje CSV. So these two are buddies. If I select one, it will import the other. And that's a way of getting the layers in that I need to use the CSV. The DWG called Naviate Line Style is always imported. So in that case, you can import. So that is also a place where you can store stuff that you always want to have imported as you start the command. So depending on how you do it, you can make sure that you get these layers in and they are set up the way you would like it to be. Because usually we want to use this as being by layer, but then the layers need to be created from the scratch, from the start. So be aware that we can solve it in multiple ways. The easiest really is to have these sort of the buddy cop system or the buddy system, where if you select line styles example, it should be a DWG called line styles example, and that's important in the same place. That is how you sort of sort this to make sure you get these layers in that you want to use. In this case, as you can see, I have a line type fence line, and that means that the object will actually have an override with fence line. If you want to do it like that, go ahead and do it. But a better way is to use by layer for these things, I would say. But those are my layers and where it comes from. If we take a look at the CSV, since we started talking about that, I said that these CSV files are in my folder. Those are the CSV files that I can see in my dropdown. So every CSV file in that folder will be in this dropdown. And you can create your own. You can do a copy of these and you can create your own, or you can create one from scratch. And if I open my line styles example here, CSV can open in Excel. Just be aware that you don't want to change the, make sure you just save the file. If you do your own, it should be a UTF-8. So use these as examples and make sure you save it in the correct format, because we know that we have some troubles with it. But inside here, you can see all these things. You have your name, group, description, everything that you need to sort of fill it out, and every property that we're using. So it's very easy to add your own. You just do a copy of this line. And then you can change your information, or you just fill in what you like it to be. So this is a normal text file that you can use. If you change it, if you save it, you need to restart the functionality to sort of get it to read it in again. But everything here is stuff that you can add on your own, and we very much use how AutoCAD handles it. So if we take a look at line weight, for instance, if we look at line weight for my property line, you can see it has a line weight 100. And if I take a look at my property line, come on, it sets to 1. So that is how it sort of handles. That's how it will be set in the variable that AutoCAD uses. So that it is actually 100, and 100 means 1 millimeter in this case. And line width is the same. So make sure you sort of track how you want this to be set up in your properties, and then you know how to set it up in your CSV. And this is, of course, something that we can also assist with and sort of show you how it actually works for your own when you do that. So that's the CSVs and our template files to get that together. Final part in here is our property set. So we can also, from this dialog, import property set and property set data. So I have the option to add property sets, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to select my grass area here. I have property information. It's going to add the property set plant data. It's going to set a couple of properties as well. The functionality for adding that, I'm just going to do escape so I don't have anything selected, is down here to add properties. So then you can add properties to my grass, for instance. And then I have my property set on that object. And since the property set has formulas, it will actually update the formulas directly. So if I select this one, and then I add my property data, it's going to add that information to the object. So I can also automatically do this. So if I again take my grass here and I say auto add property set and also auto add hatch. So these two buttons up here, you can use them individually. So I'm going to create a polyline, and I'm going to do this area up here. I'm doing it very square, but that's mainly because I want this to be pretty fast. So close, it's adding the hatch and it's adding the property set. So it's doing both of these things to my line that it contains like that. So I can add this data automatically. Now, I will also notice if I select the line, I don't get the property set there. I only get the property set on my hatch. And that is because I have a setting here that says property set to. So if you both select line and hatch, which should it add the property set to? And in this case, for my grass, it will add it to the hatch. I can also have the option of adding it to both. So it will add property set to both the line and the hatch. This depends on how you want to handle your properties. But of course, I can also say, well, I just want to add my property set afterwards. So I'm just going to say, not say auto add, and then I can add the property set. So I'm going to do property line, for instance, add properties, and add it to my property line. And now I have that property information there as well. And this could be any property set that you want to use, that you always want to add, and you can add information afterwards to it. But what we're actually doing, if you know sort of how our property functionalities work, we actually connected this. So what it's actually doing, if I go into my line style, because you'll see here that I also have where it says QTO CSV, and everything of this is documented, so it's written down in our Pinnacle help files if you want to read more about it. And I'm also available to help you with this because it is a bit tricky, I will admit, to sort of get everything to work. But what we're actually doing, we're going into QTO Manager. So in here we have plant data example. If I open plant data example, we can see what's happening. So I'm just going to close this one down. I'm going to select my property line there, and then so we can see everything sort of what we're doing. So the line style library command creates the line, adds the property set, sets the name property line, and then it sends off the next one to the QTO CSV. Next command that sort of runs in the same way goes out to the QTO CSV, finds the property line, and then adds the, in this case, name in Latin, which is what I have here. And of course, probably because I don't have a blank space in between. So it's very careful about how you enter these. So that's why we don't get the property line information there. But if we, for instance, take a look at our grass, that was a better example. Grass and grass in Latin. So it's adding the property set. It's entering the information, the value, in this case, grass. It's going to this file, finding the Latin name, and also finding the CC value, 0.6, and adding that to the property set, and then it calculates the formulas that it has. So we're using sort of, and this is something that you can do. This is match properties that we're using, or a version of match property. So it's something that you can do manually as well, that we sort of built into this if you have all this set up. You can use just individual objects or individual functionalities, but you can also combine all these things to sort of automatically get the information. Right now, we're just reading in 2 different properties into our property set, but we could read in, I'm not going to say unlimited amount of properties, but a lot of properties, I would say. So that is how we're handling it.
And that file, Caroline, that file actually comes or originates from the plant data functionality, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you could actually start that one, and people can see how this actually ties together.
Which I'm going to do in just a few seconds.
Okay. Sorry.
I have a plan, don't worry. No, but it's good you remind me, because I'm going to leave this one. Not going to say again, CSV files UTF-8, so make sure you get that. But as Thomas said, these are very combined. So because this is for creating line styles, just going to show you just the other, because these 3 commands are sort of intended to work together. The reason why I want to bring up block library is because I talked in the beginning for our Swedish customers that we're replacing the landscape 2D. And in that case, we also have block insertion. And those commands for inserting blocks, they are replaced with the block library. So inside the block library for the Swedish installation, we have the landscape symbols. So you have a lot of landscape symbols that were earlier on the tool palette that you can find here. So we have symbols, for instance, and you can add these sort of information here. So just so we sort of complete where this comes from. Inside this, and we've shown block library before, so I'm not going to go through everything here. But inside here, you can have your blocks, you can project them to surface, and you can also add or start another property set command to add it to, and then insert your block and place it in your drawing. And let's see if it's very small or very big. I'm going to guess very big. Yeah. So scaling here is something that you sort of need to take care of, because right now they think they're millimeters for the blocks that you have. But those are the ones that come there. For the Finnish part, for Finnish participants, you have the same situation. Because I know that we have mostly Finnish and Swedish, and this is where we sort of spend a lot of time for here. So inside your support files for the Finnish part, under NV blocks, you can also find landscape symbols. So you have a lot of things in here as well for adding blocks to it. So that is also a part of this block library that we can use. So it's all about adding the sort of information. But once you have that, because this can add, or rather it can start another command to add property set, but we actually recommend, if you just want to add the specific that we talked about before, then you can use the plant data command. So the plant data command we've also shown before, so if you want to know all about it, then we have other webinars that we can recommend you to take a look at. But in this case, we can use the same that we saw previously, plant data example, and you see that information there, and you have the property set. So you can use one command or you can use multiple commands, but you can access the same files. So in this case, if I want to add a property line, same thing here, add, and then I'm just going to place it on my block here. And then I get that information. And again, modular, so you can see the information here, and it's adding to it. In this case, it doesn't make sense because this is intended to be on a line, but it's not a line, so it doesn't have any length or area. So you can add that information too. So depending on the objects you have and how you created them, these three commands can assist you in getting in more information, making sure they are on the correct layer, and then adding this property information on top of it. So there's a lot of things that we can do here, but we always work from the same sort of files in our support folder. So no matter the language that you're using, you can find the CSVs where we store the information in QTO Manager, and you can find the line styles under NV Line Styles, where you have those CSVs. And for NV Blocks, you have the folder NV Blocks, where you have the block library. Everything is under the support path for standard situations. Good. The final part that I wanted to show you is just to sort of see how we can get this as tables. So I'm actually going to save this file. Good. Since it crashed, of course, it reset my file dia, which it always seems to do. So I'm just going to overwrite this one. Yes, I want to replace it. So once you have all this information, and I have it on my hatches, and I have it on my lines, and I have it on my blocks, so I have all this data, I can see this data as tables. We have two different table functionalities. One is Civil 3D schedule tables, and one is our own table. And the Civil 3D schedule table you can access, well, standard Civil 3D, but we also have it underneath plant data, where you can create a schedule table. And the schedule table, this is actually one of our own commands because we are adding this dialog just to make it a bit easier to create a schedule. So it is the property set that you're using, the schedule table, and then you can add the table to this. So you can get all your information. And right now we have a schedule set up that shows the total quantity. So you can, of course, adapt the schedule to be how you would like it to be. So this is something that is adaptable, but what you can't do, what we usually get a question for, you can see here that I have 3 lines where it says grass. We only want to have 1 for the grass, and that's usually something that is tricky in here. And in some places we can't really do it. So we have another option if you don't want to use the schedule table. The benefit of using the schedule table is it updates these objects automatically, but it's also a bit tricky to add more objects to it. But it's one option to get the table there. Hi. So in the original recording, I failed on how to do the property table with our Naviate functionality. So I just want to show you how it's actually done. So I have pretty much the same file here, and I'm just going to take a look at the Create Property Table that you have up on the Naviate Properties tab. So with the Create Property Table, what we've done in this beta version is that it's already selecting objects, so you have all objects here. Otherwise, you can do a selection set, and then you can select your objects that you want to do. And right now, it's going to select everything that has the property set on it, so I don't need to really bother when I select these objects. So I can open a template for the property table. So in the installation, and as we talked about before, everything goes to our support folders. There is a support folder for NV property table, and here you have a couple of different templates. Otherwise, you can also save your own. But right now, I have the properties here that I want to have as columns in my table. I have my summarize columns, length and area are the ones that I want to summarize. Then I can also click on only display calculated columns, which is the point here where I only want to see the summarize. But what I forgot before is I also need to have a group here. So I need to group these by name. So if I select to group this by name and then click OK, it's going to place this table in my drawing. I'm going to place it in drawing. And now you can see that I have my different properties, my different objects here, and I have the summarized values for them on the right side. So if I do this command again, if I just hit enter and do it one more time, but not click the only display calculated columns and just hit OK, then you're going to see the different objects in individual with the summarize. So you still get the summarize, you just don't get it, you just don't not only get the summarized, you also get the individual values for the different objects. The reason why I have two objects have a property line is I've spelled them two differently. So that is why I have two different versions there. That is how you can do it with the Naviate property table. So two different ways of getting the tables out in your drawing, depending on how you want to be able to change them. The schedule table has the benefits, but we know that it's difficult to edit. In this case, our own property table is easier to edit, but had some issues with it that we're working with to get that out. And the final thing, so if you have any questions, I noticed that Thomas has answered all the questions, so I'm assuming nothing there that I need to take a look at. But I just wanted to show you the final thing about exporting this to CSV, and it's also something that we've shown before. So with the property palette, our Naviate property palette, that I of course have open on another screen, so I'm just going to see if I can move it over here. In the property palette, this I think is the easiest way to find your objects. So if I take a look at everything with plant data, if I do a search, I will find everything with the plant data. I can search for specific things. I just want to find the grass. I'm going to click OK, and then search. I only find the grass. So it's a very easy way of only finding things that you're looking for here. And I can also see, let's see if this works, total quantity. So it's calculating directly to see these values. But I can also, if I do clear, and then I'm going to search for everything, I can get all this information out to CSV. So export properties to CSV to get this information out into Excel. And then you can sort that information out. And for my money, I would say that is an easier way to handle these tables than handle the tables in Civil 3D. Even though our table, of course, is better than Civil's because it's Naviate table, it's still easier to work with this in Excel, I would say. There's no comparison. So the easiest way to do good tables, really good tables, is to export it to CSV. So you get it out into Excel.
Good work, Caroline. Thank you very much, and we'll keep you posted on the upcoming webinars.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks.